My in-laws called me a disgrace. Until I exposed their fraud and sent them to a courtroom. Let me tell you the exact moment I realized my husband's family didn't see me as a daughter-in-law or even a person. They saw me as a blemish, a regrettable footnote to their otherwise perfect dynasty. My name's Madison Rose Harper. I'm 32. Grew up in East Dayton, Ohio, where the streets were cracked, the jobs were scarce, and the best you could hope for was surviving to 18 with your sanity intact. My mom was a waitress with a bad taste in men and worse luck. My dad? No idea. I stopped asking by the time I hit middle school. I had a wild streak, sure. Who didn't when survival was a game of bluff and bruises? I fought back. I stole to eat. I screamed when I should have stayed silent. Juvenile court saw my face more than my high school counselor ever did. By 17, I had a sealed file and a probation officer who told me I'd either be in jail or pregnant by 21. But I wasn't. Instead, I clawed my way out. Finished community college while bartending nights and earned a scholarship to study logistics management. Built myself from the ground up, brick by bleeding brick. By 29, I was regional operations director for one of the largest warehouse chains in the Midwest. And that's when I met Ethan Harrington. I was speaking at a regional conference in Chicago. He was consulting on a digital infrastructure project. He watched my presentation like I was reciting scripture. Afterward, he asked for coffee. 1 hour turned into 4. 2 weeks later, we were inseparable. Ethan was from a different world. Money, legacy, old country manners wrapped in modern charm. But he never made me feel lesser. In fact, he made me feel untouchable. Like my rough edges were war medals, not scars. We married within the year. Then came the Harringtons. On paper, they were elegance incarnate. Country club members. Philanthropists. Wine snobs. But underneath the matching cashmere and designer smiles, they were the kind of cruel that didn't cuss or slap. They condescended you into a corner, smiled as they pinned you there, and called it etiquette. Cynthia, my mother-in-law, led the charge. Blonde helmet hair, pearls like shackles, and a resting face so disapproving it could wilt roses. She never once used my name. I was always dear, that girl, or worse, Ethan's little project. Every Sunday dinner was a minefield. Some compliments stung, questions that were insulting, and smiles that felt like traps. My juvenile record was never mentioned. Not directly. But it was always there, in the way her hand hovered when I passed her the bread, in the way she called me resilient, like surviving poverty was some shameful hobby. Still, I swallowed it. For Ethan. He always defended them. They just don't know you yet. Give them time. Time? We'd been married for 2 years. I'd hosted their birthdays. Cooked their holidays, cleaned up their messes, and they still looked at me like I was the waiter who sat at the table by accident. But the worst part? My sister-in-law Brooke. She and I were close in the beginning. She said she liked my grit. We drank wine on the porch together and talked about childhood trauma and toxic families. I thought she was real. I thought she was an ally. Until she wasn't. It was a Sunday like any other. I brought a homemade pie, Ethan's favorite. Everyone was in the dining room, wine glasses full, laughter fake. Brooke stood up, holding a manila envelope with this Cheshire grin. We thought it'd be fun to play a little game, she announced. Guess what Madison did when she was 16? My stomach dropped. Shoplifting? Uncle Peter guessed, chuckling. Underage drinking? Aunt Helen smirked. Brooke opened the envelope and slid out a stack of papers. My past, printed and photocopied like it was a joke. Actually, Cynthia said, cutting in smoothly, it was breaking and entering. An assault, wasn't it, dear? I looked around. Faces smiling. Eyes gleaming. I looked at Ethan. He wasn't shocked. He looked ashamed. But not for me. For himself. He couldn't meet my eyes. Something cracked in my chest. Like a bone finally snapping under pressure. I stood, the pie still in my hands, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. I set the pie down gently. My hands were shaking. My ears rang. My vision blurred. But I didn't cry. Not in front of them. Excuse me, I said, and walked out the front door into the cold night. Brooke followed me. Madison. I turned. Her face froze. You were my friend, I whispered. You knew what I went through. You cried with me about your pain. You told me you understood. She didn't deny it. She just said, I didn't think you'd react like this. It was just a joke. I laughed. Loud, ugly, bitter. Then maybe you never understood anything at all. She went back inside. I stood in the dark, the cold air slicing my lungs, and realized I was done. Done being the polite one. The quiet one. The one who endured. Because I knew secrets too. Cynthia had an offshore account she didn't declare during tax season. Uncle Peter had a long-standing affair with a woman 30 years younger. And Brooke? Sweet Brooke had a DUI sealed under her husband's influence. They wanted to dig up dirt? I was about to bury them in it. The night after the incident, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, still wearing the same clothes from dinner, with my phone screen lighting up text after text. None of them were from Ethan. Not a single one. Not a "are you okay?" Not a comeback. Nothing. But Brooke texted me. Sorry if it went too far. You know how mom is. Hope we're still good. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a locked folder on my drive labeled Harrington Hypocrisy. Because while they'd been busy playing perfectly, I'd been paying attention. See, I knew I'd never be one of them. Not really. And somewhere along the way I stopped wanting to be. So I did what I do best, I observed. Quietly. Thoroughly. And I kept receipts. It started months ago when I overheard Cynthia on the phone talking about offshore rearrangements and non-disclosure asset restructuring. Rich people code for tax fraud. I made a note of it. Then there was Uncle Peter, always disappearing for business weekends and returning with lipstick on his collar and hotel receipts that didn't match the timeline. I made a note of that too. And sweet little Brooke? The DUI wasn't her first run-in. She had a shoplifting charge back in college that Daddy paid to sweep under the rug. And the kicker? Ethan knew. He knew about all of it. The next morning, I walked into our bedroom and found him showered, dressed, and packing his duffel bag. Business trip, he muttered. Really? Yeah? After what happened last night? He didn't meet my eyes. They were out of line, he said. But you can't let them get to you like that. You know how they are. Do I? Because I think I just got a front row seat to exactly who they are. And you just sat there. He sighed. I didn't want to make a scene. They were laughing at my criminal record, Ethan. And you said nothing. He finally looked at me. And what I saw in his eyes wasn't love. It was fear. Not of me. Of what I knew. Of what I might do next. Just don't start anything, Madison. Please. Don't make this worse. Worse? That's when it hit me. He wasn't afraid of me. He was afraid for them. I smiled. And it wasn't kind. I won't make it worse, Ethan, I said. I'll make it unforgettable. The next phase began with Brooke. See, Brooke had just launched her little yoga and lifestyle brand. Weekly newsletters. Brand deals. A podcast no one asked for. And all built on the image of wholesome, relatable wellness. Too bad I still had screenshots of her blackout drunk in Tulum screaming at a bartender for cutting her off. And receipts from a local boutique she stole a bracelet from claiming she'd accidentally forgotten to pay. Oops. A carefully curated email from an anonymous account with attachments made its way to 3 brands she had publicly partnered with. Within days, she lost 2 sponsorships. Her podcast episode about mindful healing through integrity was quietly deleted. She posted a vague Instagram story about taking a break to reconnect with authenticity. Sure, Brooke. Next came Peter. I compiled a timeline of his business trips, matched them to billing statements, and added photos from a certain escort's very public social media she liked posting client gifts. That package went to his wife. Anonymous. Untraceable. Devastating. The blow-up was instant. Screaming matches. Separation. Cynthia begged him to keep it quiet, but the neighbors already knew. Peter was out of the house within the week. Cynthia tried to spin it all. But cracks were showing. Her garden club turned icy. Someone whispered about her tax adjustments during a fundraiser. The women she once ruled over with passive-aggressive judgment now avoided her. And Ethan? He kept his distance. I could feel the tension. Like he was waiting for me to unleash the final hammer. And he was right to be afraid. Because I wasn't done. Not even close. There's a special kind of silence that follows chaos. It's not peace, it's anticipation. The moment before a second wave hits. That's where the Harringtons were. Everything was starting to unravel. Brooke's social image had shattered. Peter's marriage was burning down. Cynthia's once pristine reputation was a rumor mill battleground. Ethan's silence had turned brittle and defensive. And I was just warming up. You see, the Harringtons weren't just a family. They were a brand. Every year, they hosted a black tie gala for their foundation, the Harrington Trust. It was a self-congratulatory nonprofit used mostly for image laundering and cozy tax write-offs. Celebrities came. Politicians smiled. Cameras flashed. They used it to show the world how virtuous they were. This year, they were featuring a new scholarship program for youth rehabilitation, the kind of ironic twist that would be laughable if it weren't so disgusting. Guess who they wanted to parade around as their success story? That's right. Me. Cynthia emailed me directly. We'd love for you to be our featured speaker, Madison. You could offer a message of hope to at-risk youth. Very inspiring. Translation? They wanted to put my trauma in a dress and make it palatable for donors. I didn't respond. I accepted. Silently. Through Ethan's assistant. And then I got to work. I started with the guest list. Ethan had left his laptop open one night and I copied every name. CEOs, influencers, politicians, a few journalists I happened to know personally from my days running logistics contracts. Then the finances. I had access to the foundation's public filings. But the juicy stuff? That came from Brooke's cloud storage. She once synced her laptop with the family drive and forgot to log out of the folder she shared with Cynthia. TSK. Turns out the Harrington Trust was less nonprofit and more money laundering operation for luxury property overseas. Dozens of transactions marked as youth programs were actually routed to shell companies in the Cayman Islands buying villas, yachts, and one especially questionable art piece that was rumored to be smuggled antiquities. I sent copies to a journalist friend who owed me a favor. She didn't ask questions. She just said, "Are you ready for this to go nuclear?" Oh, I said, "I'm counting on it." But that wasn't all. Remember Brooke's DUI? The one Cynthia buried with hush money and a strategically placed political favor? I found the clerk who processed the records. She still had the originals. A few anonymous envelopes later, they were mailed to Cynthia's biggest rival in the local political scene. The same woman who once lost a county board election because Cynthia accused her of negligence and corruption. Now she had the receipts. I sat back and watched the fuse burn. Then came gala night. I arrived in a navy gown that cost more than Brooke's car paid for with my own money. Hair curled, makeup sharp, every inch of me dripping with poise. I walked in and silence followed me. Ethan looked pale. Cynthia looked furious. Brooke refused to meet my eyes. But I smiled, gracious as ever. "Good evening," I said, voice sweet. "So lovely to be part of the family." They didn't know. Not yet. The room filled with the elite. Laughter clinked off champagne glasses. Speeches were made. Checks were signed. Then it was my turn. Cynthia introduced me like she was presenting a dog who learned a new trick. She listed off my background with thinly veiled pride, overcame adversity, a true inspiration, and shows how far good choices can take you. I took the stage. I looked out at a sea of cameras, polished veneers, and crocodile tears. And I opened my speech with a quote. "We are all self-made, but only the successful will admit it." I watched Cynthia freeze. I spoke about redemption, about truth, about how rehabilitation isn't a photo op, how accountability doesn't mean hiding mistakes, it means owning them. Then I talked about misuse of power, how charities sometimes aren't about charity, how reputations built on silence are brittle. I never named names. I didn't have to. The press release hit 20 minutes later. Breaking: Harrington Family Foundation under federal review for financial fraud and misuse of funds. I stepped off stage to the sound of reporters scrambling, phones lighting up, and gasps slicing through champagne buzz. I didn't look back. I just smiled. Because this wasn't revenge. This was justice, plated and served. But I wasn't done yet. The Harrington name was about to become a stain on every silk tablecloth they'd ever dined on. Update. The headlines didn't stop for 3 days. Elite Harrington Family Foundation under federal probe. Anonymous whistleblower exposes generational financial scandal. Are the Harringtons just another rich fraud? Cynthia went on lockdown. Her PR team was working overtime. The foundation's social accounts were wiped clean. Comments disabled. Donations frozen. She issued a cold, clipped statement to the press, blaming a disgruntled former associate. That associate was me. And I hadn't even begun telling stories. Brooke posted an Instagram video the next day, shaky, emotional lighting, faux tears glimmering like Vaseline. "I just want to say, this isn't who we are. We're good people, we give back, and it hurts to be judged by rumors." Cue the violin. In the background of the video? Her wine rack. Fully stocked. And unfortunately for her, the same brand of wine she once bragged about stealing from an event she sponsored. The internet noticed. By day 5, multiple sponsors dropped the Harrington Trust. Ethan's company quietly announced a leave of absence for personal reasons. Brooke was dumped by her fiancé. Cynthia's picture was removed from a charity board she helped found. But none of them talked to me. No calls. No emails. No apology. Instead, I got served. A cease. Delivered by a too polite lawyer in a too perfect suit. Cynthia accused me of defamation. Of knowingly spreading malicious falsehoods. Falsehoods? Huh? I smiled, signed the acknowledgement form, and handed the lawyer a second envelope. Inside, proof. Full documentation of the trust's financial laundering. Names, wire transfers, IRS blind statements, backup files downloaded from Brooke's cloud, cross-reference data. The lawyer turned pale. "Ms. Harper, No need," I said. "Just make sure Cynthia sees it. And tell her." I leaned in, just enough to watch him flinch. This was me being merciful. See, I wasn't trying to win in court. I wanted them to understand what it felt like to choke on shame. To watch everything you built turn to rot because you refused to look at the foundation. But something I didn't expect. Ethan called. 3 days after the gala. 1:04 a.m., voice trembling. "I didn't know it would go this far. Didn't you? I didn't think you'd actually destroy us. You let them destroy me, Ethan. You stood there. You watched. You let them laugh. Silence. You know they're broken, right? My mother, Brooke, all of them. It's all lies. And I thought you were different. I was. Until I wasn't. Can we talk? In person." I laughed. "Talk? You mean like we did at the dinner when you said nothing while they handed around my teenage mugshot? I made a mistake. I should've. You chose them. And I chose truth. That's not a mistake, Ethan. That's a decision." He started crying. Actually crying. The kind of breakdown I hadn't heard in years. "I'm losing everything. I need help. Please." And maybe once I would have cracked. But not anymore. "Then maybe you'll finally understand what survival feels like," I said and hung up. The next day, I had lunch with Lillian. Remember her? Cynthia's former best friend. The woman who was ousted from the charity board years ago after a scandal Cynthia all but engineered. Lillian smiled as she sipped her iced tea. "You really did it, Didn't you? Almost. Well, let me know if you want help with the cleanup. I still have access to old board minutes, emails, and donor records, and a list of people who'd love to watch Cynthia bleed. Turns out, allies can come from the unlikeliest corners. That night, I watched the news. Ethan's face flashed across the screen, blurred, but unmistakable, as investigators raided the trust's headquarters. And while they swore I wasn't involved, the press spun their version. Wife turns against in-laws in high-stakes expose. They called me a whistleblower, a traitor, a hero, a villain. They didn't know the truth, didn't know this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was war. And war doesn't end when your enemy surrenders. It ends when they have nothing left to defend. There's a moment in every war when the enemy realizes they've already lost. When their weapons jam, their fortress starts crumbling, and the people they count on to fight beside them quietly step back and disappear. That was where the Harringtons were now. The walls were falling. The Harrington Trust was officially shut down pending investigation. Cynthia's assets were frozen. Brooke had locked her socials and ghosted everyone. Ethan had resigned from his company indefinitely and moved back into the family estate, which now felt more like a tomb than a mansion. And still, they refused to apologize. Not publicly, not to me, not to the dozens of people they'd harmed. Instead, Cynthia filed a countersuit, accused me of slander, libel, and emotional distress. She wanted to silence me and reclaim control, so I made sure her final weapon exploded in her hands. Lillian had contacts in the IRS. Real ones. People who'd been waiting for an excuse to dive deeper into the Harrington holdings for years. We gave them a map, anonymous tips, leaked board minutes, misfiled donation receipts. A whistleblower blog started circulating on dark money forums and nonprofit watchdog networks. It painted the Harringtons as the golden family of corruption. Cynthia's lawyers tried to do damage control, but it was like trying to plug a sinking ship with a napkin. Then came the subpoena. Not for me, for Ethan. Turns out, he'd co-signed several of the trust's offshore investments. Not because he believed in them. He told me once it was just family pressure. But pressure or not, he was legally tied to it. And the government doesn't care about guilt. Only signatures. He showed up at my door, disheveled, hollow-eyed. He looked like a ghost of himself. I don't know what to do, he said. They want me to testify. Against my mother. So testify. She'll be destroyed. She destroyed herself. He sank onto the steps outside my apartment. The same man who once made me feel like I was made of stars now looked like a collapsed sun. Did you ever love me? He whispered. I crouched down beside him. I loved the version of you that wasn't afraid to stand beside me. But he died the day you let them humiliate me and said nothing. He broke. Fully broke. His shoulders shaking, hands over his face. He kept saying, I'm sorry, over and over, like it could erase anything. I let him cry. I didn't comfort him, but I let him have that moment. Because of the guilt, that was his to carry now. Later that week, he testified. Sworn under oath, Ethan named every offshore account, every misused donation, and every unethical transaction. He didn't flinch, not even when Cynthia stared daggers at him from across the courtroom. She was arrested the next day. The local news ran it for 4 nights straight. Matriarch of prestigious family faces federal charges. Once praised charity exposed as international laundering scheme. And me? I didn't say a word. Not publicly. Not yet. Because I was preparing something else. Something permanent. A memoir. Not just about the Harringtons, but about what it means to survive a system that wasn't built for you. To be seen as broken, when in reality you were forged and called a mistake, when in truth you were the reckoning they never saw coming. Publishers were already circling. An independent press had offered full editorial control and a 6-figure advance. And I was considering it. Every person who'd ever been laughed at across a dinner table, whispered about in the halls, judged by the skin of their past while others hid the bones in their closets. And I was done whispering. With Cynthia behind bars and the Harrington Trust declared defunct, the cracks turned to ruptures. Everything they built, every polished facade, every forced smile, crumbled under the weight of its hypocrisy. But I wasn't celebrating. Not yet, because as much as I wanted to believe it was over, I knew something was coming. It always does. The richer they are, the deeper the rot and the harder it fights back. It started with a letter. A sleek, embossed envelope slipped under my apartment door. No postage. Hand-delivered. Inside was a single typed page. No header. No sender. Just 5 words. We know what you did. That night I checked my fireproof lockbox. The The one that held backups of everything. Drive logs, cloud passwords, encrypted flash drives. Nothing was missing. But the message was clear. Someone knew. Not just what I exposed, but how. I didn't panic. I went into overdrive. I met with my attorney, someone I trusted. She read the note, then looked me in the eye and said, "This is intimidation. You're hitting nerves, Madison. Big ones." She wasn't wrong. Turns out, one of Cynthia's remaining allies, a former investment partner with ties to several shell companies, was still trying to salvage what was left. He wasn't doing it for loyalty. He was doing it for leverage. If I could be discredited, so could the case. So I called Lillian. She didn't even hesitate. "Let me guess," she said. "Gray paper. Gold trim. Courier dropped it off but didn't stay." "Exactly. They sent one to me too." She handed me her envelope. Said the same thing. "We know what you did." But she smiled. "They think fear still works on women like us. Isn't that adorable?" We met with a journalist friend, Marla, a war reporter turned corruption watchdog. She'd spent years unraveling political money trails and exposing dirty judges. She looked over the evidence we'd gathered, the threats, the testimony, and said, "Want to make this public?" I hesitated. It would mean more exposure, more attention, more danger, but it would also mean power. And truth, once spoken out loud, is hard to kill. "Do it," I said. The article dropped 2 weeks later. Front page. Whistleblowers threatened in elite cover-up attempt. Madison Harper's face. Lillian's face. Our stories. Our receipts. Black and white and in print. We didn't hide. And then something strange happened. Support. Emails. Messages. Posts. People I'd never met sharing their own stories. Of being silenced. Mocked. Torn apart for who they used to be. One woman wrote, "I was in juvie too. I haven't told anyone in 15 years. You made me feel like I don't have to be ashamed anymore." Another said, "They said I wasn't worth saving. Now I'm watching you tear down a dynasty." I didn't cry until the third night. Alone on my balcony. City lights buzzing below. I sat with my laptop and just wept. Not out of sadness. It wasn't sadness that made me cry that night. It was the relief of finally being heard. The rage had burned through me and left clarity in its place. I realized I wasn't just someone who'd made it out. I was proof that they couldn't bury the truth forever. I had become the story they never wanted to tell. And from here on out, I wasn't going back. That weekend, the phone rang. Not Ethan. Not Cynthia. Brooke. Her voice was quiet. Too quiet. "Madison," she said. "I didn't know what they were planning. I swear I didn't know about the letter. I didn't say anything. I was wrong," she said. "About you. About everything." Still, I said nothing. "I want to help. I have things. Emails. Documents. Voice recordings. From before the gala. Before the fallout. Stuff that could bury what's left." I leaned back in my chair, heart flatlined. Brooke. The same woman who laughed over my past. Who printed my juvenile record like it was trivia night. And now she was offering to help bury her own family. "I don't trust you," I said. "I don't expect you to," she replied. "But I trust you'll know what to do with what I send." Then she hung up. The next morning I had a flash drive in my inbox. No name. No message. Just a single file name. "Start here." And I did. There are two kinds of endings. The ones you walk away from quietly, finally free. And the ones you orchestrate to make sure they never forget who ended it. I chose the second. The flash drive Brooke sent me was more than evidence. It was a blueprint. Emails confirming hush money deals. Audio clips of Cynthia coaching Brooke on how to handle the press with false narratives. Spreadsheets showing selective donor reporting. Even an old voice memo Ethan left on Brooke's phone, drunk, panicked, saying, "If this goes public, we're screwed. Don't let her talk." So I talked. I compiled everything into a final package, digital files, dates, annotated context, and a timeline that started the night they mocked my teenage mugshot. Then I sent it to every major outlet I'd worked with, every law firm investigating them, and every board that still had a Harrington name on their plaque. I didn't include a statement. I didn't need to. The data spoke for itself. The Harrington name was wiped from scholarship buildings, removed from gala invitations, and quietly deleted from charity listings. Cynthia's sentencing was upgraded to federal time, not just state. Brooke was blacklisted from half the nonprofit scene. Ethan? He filed for bankruptcy and moved in with a cousin in Vermont. I heard he teaches business ethics now. Poetic, right? And me? I signed the book deal. Sealed files, what they tried to hide. It went viral before it even hit shelves. Pre-orders topped the charts. Podcasts called. Book clubs called. Survivors called. One day I got a message from a girl. 17. In foster care. Said she'd read my excerpts online. She wrote, "They say I'm going to end up in jail or worse. But now I think I can prove them wrong." And that was the real win. Because I didn't just tear down a family. I tore down a myth that power makes you untouchable. That silence is survival. That shame belongs to those who are wounded, not those who are wounded. The final chapter of my book ends with a single line. This was never about revenge. This was about refusing to stay quiet. And as for the Harringtons? They're not invited to the book launch. But they'll hear about it. Everyone will. Because sometimes the best way to bury a dynasty is to write its obituary yourself. And now I ask you, if the people who judged you tried to ruin you, would you survive quietly? Or would you tear down their whole empire brick by brick? Hope you enjoyed this story as much as I do. Help this small channel grow by hitting that like button, subscribing, and sharing with your friends. Every bit of support means the world. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.